The Wendigo's hunger, a search for survival. The chilling wind cut through the dense forest as I trudged deeper into the heart of the wilderness. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting eerie shadows upon the gnarled trees and tangled underbrush. I was part of a search party, tasked with finding 4 missing people whose plane had crashed in this unforgiving wilderness. Little did I know that this search would lead me down a path of terror and despair that would forever haunt my nightmares. We had been searching for hours, our flashlights cutting through the darkness like frail beacons of hope. The forest seemed to stretch on endlessly, with no sign of the survivors or the wreckage of the plane. Anxiety gnawed at my insides, and a sense of dread settled over the group like a shroud. The search had started like any other, with hopes of finding the missing passengers alive and well. But as the night wore on, our optimism waned. We were about to call off the search for the night and regroup when we heard a faint cry in the distance. "Did you hear that?" one of the search party members exclaimed. We all strained our ears and heard it again, a desperate cry for help. Without a second thought, we followed the sound deeper into the forest. The cries grew louder and more frantic, leading us to a small clearing where we found a lone survivor. He was huddled against a tree, his clothes torn and covered in mud. His face was ashen, and his eyes held a look of unspeakable terror. We rushed to his side, offering him a blanket and water, trying to calm his trembling form. "Thank God we found you," I said, trying to reassure him. "Can you tell us what happened? Are there others with you?" The survivor took a shuddering breath, his voice quivering as he spoke. "There were 4 of us. The plane crashed, and we tried to survive. But one of them started acting strange." "What do you mean strange?" another member of the search party asked. The survivor's gaze drifted away, lost in a distant memory. He claimed he was hungry, that he couldn't go on without food. And then he did the unthinkable. A chill ran down my spine as I listened to the survivor's horrifying account. He described how one of the crash survivors had resorted to cannibalism, consuming the flesh of another passenger who had died in the wreckage. The others had been repulsed and terrified, but they had no choice but to stay with him in the wilderness. "We had to run," the survivor continued, tears streaming down his face. He started changing. His skin turned pale, and his eyes, they glowed with a malevolent hunger. We couldn't stay with him any longer. A sense of foreboding settled over the group. If the survivor's story was true, they had left one of their own behind, transformed into something monstrous. Determined to find out the truth, we pressed on, following the survivor's shaky directions deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around us as we moved through the darkness, our flashlights flickering as if resisting the encroaching malevolence that hung in the air. Our hearts pounded in our chests, and the sense of impending doom grew stronger with each step. Finally, we stumbled upon a small makeshift campsite. It was a scene of horror. Torn clothing and scattered belongings littered the ground, and the remnants of a fire smouldered nearby. But what truly sent shivers down our spines was the sight of a man huddled near the remains of the fire, his back to us. The survivor recognized him immediately. "That's him," he whispered, his voice quaking with fear. We approached cautiously, our flashlights illuminating the man's form. He was hunched over, his shoulders trembling as if he were weeping. But when he turned to face us, the sight that met our eyes was nothing short of a nightmare. His skin had turned a sickly grey, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly hunger. His teeth had elongated into razor-sharp fangs, and his fingers had become grotesque claws. It was as if he had transformed into a creature of pure terror, a Wendigo. My heart raced as I realized the gravity of the situation. The survivor's story was true, and we were face to face with the monstrous result of cannibalism. The Wendigo let out a guttural growl, its eyes fixed on us with an insatiable hunger. Without hesitation, we raised our flashlights and weapons, preparing for the fight of our lives. The Wendigo lunged at us with lightning speed, its fangs gnashing, and a desperate battle ensued. The forest echoed with the sounds of our struggle, a symphony of fear and fury. Despite our best efforts, the Wendigo was relentless. It was as if it drew strength from the darkness itself. One by one, my fellow search party members fell, their screams swallowed by the night. I stumbled back, my body battered and bruised, my flashlight flickering dangerously. The Wendigo, now bloodied and maddened, advanced on me, its eyes locked onto mine with a hunger that sent shivers down my spine. As it lunged for the final attack, a shot rang out and the Wendigo's grotesque form crumpled to the ground. I turned to see the survivor, the one who had shared his harrowing tale, standing there with a smoking gun in his hand. He looked at me with haunted eyes, his voice filled with anguish. I couldn't let it continue. I couldn't let it spread. We were the only survivors of that nightmarish encounter. The forest had claimed the others, leaving only us to bear witness to the horrors that had transpired. As we made our way back to civilization, the survivor and I exchanged few words, haunted by the knowledge of what we had faced. The Wendigo had been defeated, but the memory of that night would forever linger in our minds, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can consume even the most desperate souls. And as I lay in my bed at night, I can still hear the cries of the Wendigo echoing in the depths of the forest, a chilling reminder that some nightmares are all too real. Wendigo Journal, A Descent into Madness and Cannibalism. The wind howled through the desolate forest, carrying with it an eerie sense of foreboding. The moon hung low in the night sky, casting a pale, ghostly glow over the wilderness. It was here, in the heart of this forsaken place, that the transformation began. A transformation that would unravel both body and mind. I had always been drawn to the mysteries of the wilderness, its untouched beauty, and its ancient secrets. But little did I know that my insatiable curiosity would lead me down a dark and treacherous path, a path that would ultimately change me in ways I could never have imagined. It all started on a bitterly cold winter night. I was part of a research expedition studying the effects of climate change on the local wildlife. We had set up camp deep in the heart of the forest, far from civilization, with only the bare essentials to sustain us. One evening, as the snow fell heavily around our campfire, a fellow researcher named Emily returned from a solo scouting mission, her face pale and her eyes filled with terror. She was clutching something in her hand, a tattered journal, old and weathered. "I found this in an abandoned cabin nearby," she said, her voice trembling. "It's the diary of a trapper who used to live in these woods." We gathered around the fire, huddled together for warmth, and listened as Emily read aloud from the journal. The words that spilled forth were filled with dread and despair. The trapper had written about the legend of the Wendigo, a malevolent spirit that possessed those who resorted to cannibalism in the wilderness. The trapper's own descent into madness was detailed in gruesome detail. He spoke of the insatiable hunger that had consumed him, driving him to commit unspeakable acts. He described the nightmarish transformation that had overtaken him. The elongation of limbs, the sharpening of teeth, and the agonizing hunger that could never be sated. As Emily read, a shiver ran down my spine. I couldn't help but scoff at the notion of a supernatural creature taking hold of a person's soul. But the journal's descriptions of the trapper's transformation were so vivid, so unsettling, that doubt began to creep into my mind. That night, as I lay in my tent, the wind howling outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, something ancient and malevolent. Sleep eluded me, and I found myself consumed by a gnawing hunger that seemed to grow with each passing moment. Days turned into weeks and our research continued, but I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that had taken hold of me, the feeling that something dark and insidious was lurking just beyond the edge of my consciousness. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the forest plunged into darkness, I ventured out alone. My hunger had become unbearable, and I needed to satisfy it, to quell the insatiable desire that had taken root within me. I stumbled upon a small game trail, and there, in the moonlight, I spotted a lone deer. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached, and the primitive instincts that had lain dormant within me surged to life. I lunged at the unsuspecting animal, my teeth sinking into its flesh, and I feasted greedily. But as I devoured the raw meat, a chilling realization washed over me. I had become the very thing I had dismissed as superstition. The transformation had begun, and there was no turning back. Days turned into weeks, and I retreated deeper into the forest, away from my fellow researchers, my mind deteriorating with each passing day. I no longer had control over my actions, driven by an insatiable hunger that could never be satisfied. My body changed, contorting and elongating, my skin turning a sickly grey. My limbs grew long and sinewy, and my hands became grotesque claws. My teeth sharpened into fangs, and my eyes glowed with a malevolent hunger. My mind became a hazy, disjointed nightmare. I could no longer distinguish between reality and delusion. I hunted animals, and sometimes, when the hunger grew too great, I hunted those who ventured too close to my territory. My once human thoughts were replaced by an all-consuming desire for flesh. The transformation was complete, and I had become a creature of darkness, a Wendigo. It was a fellow researcher who finally stumbled upon me, his horrified gaze locking onto my monstrous form. He raised his rifle, trembling with fear, and I lunged at him with a primal roar. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the forest, and darkness swallowed me once more. I am now a prisoner within my own mind, trapped in this monstrous form, a prisoner to the insatiable hunger that consumes me. I am no longer human, no longer capable of reason or empathy. I am a Wendigo, a creature of the wilderness, a creature of darkness. And as I roam these haunted woods, forever haunted by my own transformation, I can only pray that my fate serves as a warning to those who dare to tread too close to the darkness that lurks in the heart of the wilderness. The Cabin in the Woods, a tale of cannibalism and curse. As I approached the cabin, the chilling silence was broken only by the sound of my laboured breaths and the crunch of snow beneath my boots. The cabin appeared deserted, its windows frosted and its chimney empty of smoke. An uneasy feeling settled over me as I approached the front door, which stood ajar. I pushed the door open and entered cautiously, my flashlight sweeping the room. The cabin's interior was dimly lit by the pale moonlight filtering through the curtains, revealing a scene of eerie desolation. The family's belongings were scattered haphazardly, as if they had left in a hurry. A sense of foreboding settled over me as I continued to search the cabin, finding no signs of life. My attention was drawn to a journal lying on the kitchen table. It was open to the last entry, and I began to read, my heart sinking with each word. Journal entry, Day 1. The snowstorm hit us hard today. We're trapped inside the cabin, and it doesn't look like it's letting up anytime soon. We have enough supplies to last us a few days, but we need to be careful. It's going to be a long winter. Journal entry, Day 3. The snow just keeps falling. We tried to dig ourselves out, but it's no use. We can barely see anything beyond the windows. The kids are getting restless, and we're rationing our food as best as we can. We have to stay strong. Journal entry, Day 7. We're running low on food, and the kids are starting to get hungry. We're scared, but we can't let fear take over. We'll figure something out. Journal entry, Day 11. We lost Sarah today. She was so weak and there was nothing we could do. We held a small ceremony and buried her in the backyard. The kids are crying themselves to sleep every night. I can't bear to see them like this. Journal entry, Day 15. We can't go on like this. The kids are starving, and so am I. There's no hope of rescue, and we can't let ourselves die here. We made a terrible decision today, one that will haunt us forever. My heart sank as I read the final entry, realizing the horrifying truth. The family had resorted to the unthinkable, cannibalism, to survive. Their desperation had driven them to consume the flesh of their own loved one, and I shuddered at the unimaginable horrors they must have endured. Just as I closed the journal, a sudden noise outside the cabin jolted me from my thoughts. It was a low, guttural growl, followed by the sound of branches snapping and leaves rustling. My flashlight darted to the window, but all I could see was the swirling snowstorm beyond. I reached for my radio to call for backup, but a sinister presence seemed to envelop the cabin. The growling outside grew louder and more menacing, and then an unearthly wail pierced the night, a sound that sent chills down my spine. I ventured outside, my heart pounding, to investigate the source of the disturbance. The snow had piled up, obscuring the view, but I could feel eyes upon me, lurking in the darkness. My flashlight illuminated the area around me, revealing nothing but the desolation of the snow-covered forest. Just as I was about to retreat back into the cabin, I saw movement in the shadows. Figures, gaunt and twisted, emerged from the trees. Their eyes glowed with an unholy hunger, and their limbs elongated into grotesque forms. It was as if the family had transformed into something monstrous, a clan of Wendigos. With a sickening realization, I understood the horrifying truth. The family's cannibalistic act had cursed them, turning them into these abominable creatures. I backed away, my breath coming in panicked gasps as the Wendigos closed in. Their inhuman growls growing louder, I turned and fled into the cabin, bolting the door behind me. The journal lay open on the table, a testament to the family's desperate struggle for survival. But now their legacy lived on in the nightmarish creatures that roamed the forest. As I huddled in the cabin, trapped and surrounded by the Wendigos, I couldn't help but wonder if I would soon share their horrifying fate. The snowstorm raged on outside, concealing the monstrous horrors that lurked in the shadows, and my heart filled with dread as I awaited the dawn, praying for rescue that might never come. Thanks for watching. To support us, please like and subscribe.